Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging straight into a really captivating essay. It's called Exit 3 Epiphany by Walter Baum.
Right, and what's immediately striking, I think, is the setting. It's just, a Holiday Inn.
Yeah, right off the New Jersey Turnpike, Exit 3.
Feels so, I don't know, ordinary. But that's kind of the point, isn't it? That's where the real story unfolds.
Exactly. And for the author, working there as a teenager, it became this really significant place, a backdrop for growing up.
More than just a job, clearly.
Oh, definitely. And the essay, it just paints this picture with these amazing characters. You've got Hank the Hat.
The headbanging dishwasher.
Yeah. And Smokey, the sous chef, always chewing a cigar, apparently.
Uh-huh. And Gary, the setup guy.
Singing Grateful Dead tunes, yeah. And then there's Elise, the sort of Delta Zeta nymph, as he calls her.
It really brings that whole kitchen, that whole environment to life. You can almost smell the grease and hear the noise.
Totally. But the real core of it, the absolute heart, is the relationship between the author and Tom the cook.
Right. And the context is important there. The author's parents were divorced.
And he wasn't close to his dad, so he sort of looked to Tom.
As a mentor figure, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because they were so different on the surface.
Completely. Tom's into racing at Atco Speedway, taking apart engines.
Real hands-on stuff.
While the author is reading Keats into poetry.
It's that contrast that makes it compelling, I think. It sets up this really interesting dynamic.
Yeah, where do we find these guiding lights? Sometimes it's not where you expect.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. Our sort of mission here is to unpack how these, seemingly mundane experiences at a Holiday Inn.
And these unexpected connections, especially with Tom.
How they really shaped the author's view of adulthood, dealing with frustration, forming his identity.
We want to really get into those interactions, see what they reveal about his journey, and maybe, spark some thoughts for listeners too.
Okay, so let's start with the hotel itself. That whole front of house versus back of house thing.
Right, these two separate worlds almost under one roof.
And the author sort of trying to bridge them.
Yeah, he talks about trying to put his word of the day on the menu board, like fortuitous or something.
Can you imagine? In that kitchen environment.
What does that tell you? Maybe youthful idealism? Trying to connect?
Could be. And then the music thing. Him playing Mozart's Requiem.
While Tom's blasting Born to be Wild.
It's a perfect symbol of that clash, isn't it? His attempt to maybe inject his world into theirs.
Or just finding common ground. But maybe highlighting the differences more.
Well, yeah. It shows Tom's, raw energy versus the author's more maybe intellectual vibe at the time.
It makes you think about your own attempts, maybe, to fit in or connect different groups.
Definitely. And then there were the actual conversations they had, those weekend mornings.
Tom at the grill talking about the author's non-existent love life.
Right, giving advice, which the author admits didn't always sink in.
Mind stuck in sand, he says.
It's such a relatable picture, though, isn't it? Teenage worries, seeking advice from someone older you respect.
Even if the advice isn't quite right or you're not ready to hear it.
Exactly. You think about who gave you advice back then, what stuck, what didn't.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so that brings us to this really vivid moment, the shot of defiance.
Yes. Tom teaching him how to deal with frustration.
They're throwing a lowball glass against the wall by the dumpsters.
Such a physical, almost primal act. And the context is key, like you said. Tom's mad at Bud, the manager.
And the author's upset about Elise. So there's this shared frustration.
A shared feeling of maybe being stuck or powerless.
And that shattering glass. He describes it as the beauty of senselessness and the satisfaction of defiance.
Especially against authority figures, right? Bud, maybe even unspoken frustrations.
He connects it to wanting a lightsaber or taming thestrals, these sort of fantasy escapes.
It's not about fixing the problem, is it? It's about the release.
Exactly, that raw release.
And if you think back to what he said earlier about being the understudy dad at home,
taking on responsibility young,
you have to wonder, was the frustration really just about Elise? Or was that kind of the focal point for deeper stuff?
Deeper resentments about home, about responsibility.
Maybe. Maybe Elise was just the available target for feelings that were really about something bigger, and Tom provided this outlet.
That's a really interesting angle. It definitely complicates that moment, makes it about more than just a teenage crush.
That makes you question where your own frustrations sometimes land, doesn't it? Do we always aim them at the right target?
Yeah. A symbolic act, like you said, acknowledging the feeling.
Okay, so moving on. The summer road trip, he's finished freshman year of college.
Right. And Tom makes this request
This very, very peculiar request.
to piss in the Colorado River for him. I mean, wow.
It's startling, isn't it? But think about the intimacy of it.
How so?
Well, asking someone, especially this younger guy he mentored, to do something so, I guess, personal at a famous landmark.
It does imply a lot of trust.
And maybe that vicarious experience thing you mentioned earlier, Tom wanting to connect to something beyond his everyday world.
The author notes that if Tom had just said piss in the Grand Canyon, he'd have laughed. But the for me part?
That changes everything. It gives it weight, significance.
Yeah, it really does. Okay,
Yeah.
but then the journal from that trip,
200 pages.
and not a single mention of Tom or the Holiday Inn.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Was he trying to, like, consciously leave that behind,
Yeah.
moving into college life?
It's possible. You know, sometimes when we start a new chapter, we try to compartmentalize.
Put the past in a box.
Maybe the Holiday Inn felt like, obligation, work, and college was freedom. So he focuses writing on that.
Could be. We all curate our own stories, I guess, what we choose to remember or record.
And then, at the Grand Canyon itself, he really wants to hike down.
Desperately. But his mom says no.
And in the journal, he writes about trying to convince his siblings, all these tactics.
But he never writes the real reason.
Tom's request.
He makes up other motives. What's going on there?
It just screams internal conflict, doesn't it? He wants to assert himself, maybe prove his manliness by doing the hike.
But then underneath
is this unspoken promise to Tom, this weirdly profound mission.
it had become really important to him, hadn't it? Honoring that bond.
Absolutely. And maybe he couldn't even articulate why it felt so important, even to himself in the journal.
So his mom saying no wasn't just about missing a hike.
It was thwarting this unspoken quest. You can feel the anger in the journal entries, even if he doesn't name the real source.
He imagines being down by the river thinking he could do things right then. It clearly stuck with him.
Deeply.
Okay, so let's talk about when he gets back home after the trip.
Right. He describes feeling angry, resentful, and lonely.
Which is maybe surprising. He missed his coworkers.
Yeah, Elise, Hank the Hat, Gary, Smokey, and Tom. He longed for that connection from his first job.
It shows how important that workplace community had become, right? Even a Holiday Inn kitchen.
Absolutely. Those early job bonds can be really intense, really formative. It became his place, his group, outside of family.
And speaking of family, he touches on the dynamic with his mom. Was she frustrated having an adult kid back?
He felt like an ignored spouse, he says. But the issues weren't typical marriage problems. They were about time, maybe understanding.
It's that tricky transition, isn't it? Parent-child roles shifting as you become an adult.
Yeah, it's rarely smooth. Lots of unspoken stuff, usually.
So then he thinks again, later on, about why Tom wasn't in the journal.
And he considers different reasons. Protecting Tom's privacy, the whole father figure thing being sensitive.
Maybe protecting his mom, or just realizing later the divorce was okay.
He mentions gaining perspective,
Yeah.
being 32 rows back, hindsight.
It really shows how we reinterpret our own past as we get older, doesn't it?
Definitely. Our understanding evolves. Why we did things or didn't do things becomes clearer sometimes.
Our personal stories are always sort of being revised. And then, looking back, he talks about this yearning he still has for the people outside his family who helped him.
That really resonates. The importance of those unexpected mentors.
He even imagines taking his own daughters to the Grand Canyon someday.
And having this funny thought about finally getting to hike down, using the old unfulfilled request as a kind of internal joke or excuse.
It shows how that connection, that memory, still lingers.
It really does. It honors those people who see something in you, who guide you, maybe in ways your family can't.
You think about who those figures were in your own life.
For sure. And the conclusion is so powerful. He says Tom saw beyond the fool.
Meaning, saw past his teenage awkwardness or mistakes.
Yeah, and that because of Tom, he feels more of a man, even though he never actually,
Fulfilled the request. Right. It wasn't about the physical act.
It was about the belief Tom showed him, the connection, the respect. That's what made the impact.
So, wrapping up this deep dive into Exit 3 Epiphany, it's clear, isn't it, that ordinary first job, that Holiday Inn kitchen,
And Tom the cook, this unlikely mentor.
they were absolutely crucial, shaping his identity, how he learned to handle frustration, that whole push for independence.
The lessons learned there, the bonds formed, they ran deep. even if he couldn't fully grasp it or write about it at the time.
It's a brilliant example of how coming of age isn't just big milestones.
No, it's often built from these everyday moments, these interactions with people who just happened to cross our path.
In the most unexpected places sometimes.
Yeah.
It really does make you pause and think, doesn't it? What about those interactions in your own life, the ones that seem small at the time?
Who are your Tom the Cook figures? The unexpected guides.
And are there any unspoken requests or lessons learned back then that maybe still echo for you today? Something to mull over. Maybe looking back offers a new perspective on your own path.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Hey, sports, young and old. Thank you so much for watching and enjoying this. This is really interesting. This Notebook LM, my wife, instructional designer at Rutgers, taught me about this. It's really, really curious stuff. Thank you so much, and happy reading. And check out some of my stuff. And I have a book, Lamentations of a Trophy Husband, which is about comedy and my crazy stories about growing up, sort of like this. This one's a little more serious, but cheers. Take care.